Gailey joined us too.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's PCMA webinar, Beyond the Logo, Crafting a Brand that Engages, Retains, and Grows Your Club. In an increasingly competitive market, your club's brand is more than just a logo or a color palette. It's the story you tell, the emotions you evoke, and the lasting impressions you leave on members and prospects. Today's session is designed to help you take your club's brand to the next level by aligning it with purpose, experience, and strategy. Before we begin, just a quick reminder, this webinar is recorded and will be available to all registered attendees. We will try to get it on the website by tomorrow. We also have a Q&A box that you'll see on your screen right behind the presentation. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to drop your questions there, and we'll save some time at the end, about 15 minutes, to address those questions. Another quick note I just want to point out, there are a couple of videos in this presentation. For whatever reason, we're having a couple issues with the technology and getting those videos to come through. So when we upload the webinar to the website tomorrow, we will also include links to those videos, and we'll email them out to you as well so that you can reference them later on. So with that, we're honored to be led today by someone who has truly helped shape the modern club marketing profession, Rick Coyne. With over 50 years of experience in private club management, market analysis, and strategic marketing, Rick has assisted more than 1,400 clubs and presented at over 900 workshops worldwide. He's also a successful author and served as the co-founder and CEO of PCMA, providing education, advocacy, and innovation to our industry for many years. Rick's deep commitment to strategic planning and data-driven insights has helped countless clubs stay ahead in a constantly evolving landscape, and we're thrilled to have him guide today's discussion. So please join me in welcoming Rick Coyne.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today as well. It's always a great honor to talk to the revenue czars of our industry. And that's really what membership really is. It's the revenue generation. It's the lifeblood of the club. And my hope today is to take a look at branding in a kind of a laser way so that we can look at the strategy behind branding, what branding really is. And obviously there's not enough time to really do complete justice to the topic, but suffice to say that if anybody is working on brand or is concerned about their brand or wants to find a way to determine what their brand and market position needs to be, take a screenshot at the end, or as Jordan has said, there'll be a posting of the session on the website tomorrow. Let's get into this, starting with, what essentially is the brand? It is, as we said, beyond what the logo tells us it is. But the logo, and it's also, to me, when I look at the logo, I think to myself, so many people still think that is the brand, but no question it represents the brand. But in most cases, brand is generated solely on what you do and how people perceive what you do. When the better the perception of what you're doing, the better that logo defines who you are and reminds them about you. So that's a pretty big distinction to start off with. It's not logo, it's how you are perceived. How you are perceived are all of the things that you do. And let's get into that a little bit. One, I think that we always have, I always bring this up in any seminar I do. You serve two masters, you serve two audiences, and very clearly, those two audiences are members first, obviously, but secondarily, we are addressing those that are not yet members. And as we consider who that is, I still marvel at the question, and I'm not having the opportunity to actually hear your responses today unless you put it in your question in the chat room or one of the questions. But it's important that we understand who your market is. How many, for example, within 15 minutes of your club, if you're a country club, maybe longer than that as a yacht club, certainly shorter than that if you're a city club. But how many of you know how many of the households around you or the businesses around you have executives or people within those households that are earning more than $400,000 a year? Quite often, and frankly, almost always, I get nobody to answer to raise their hand. And I think that's critical for us to understand. You got to know what that market looks like. How else do you position your club if you don't know who lives there, if you don't know who's going to be a potential client or member in that mix? And it's trust me when I tell you is one of the most vitally important things that we need to understand. Let's move on. How brand development works for you. First and foremost, a brand tells your story. It tells the story to your members, and it tells the story to those people that we just talked about, the not yet members. It's creating expectations. It's almost like, in some cases, it's almost like a mission statement. It gives people the opportunity to say, if I join that club, that's what I can expect. And the greater the expectation that you can create, the more likely people are to join. It also, in that expectation side, is addressing retention. If you're meeting expectations, people are less likely to leave. So brand in this case, market positioning in this case, are two critical factors in the things that actually drive the dues production and the revenue stream in our club. Finally, if it's properly done, your brand is going to generate attractiveness. It's going to attract attractiveness across a broad spectrum of demographics. And what we'll talk about in just a minute is the broader the market that you are attracting, the greater the testimony to your brand. It means that the things that you're doing internally are addressing all of the people that are in your community and all of the members that you have in your club. The next thing is, again, diving into the demographics. And, there's never been a more diverse segmentation of people within our clubs. And in every club, I don't care who you are, has this variety. It's variety on the basis of age. It's variety on the basis of gender. It's variety on the basis of family. And each one of those characteristics, demographic characteristics, carries with it a particular want or need that may not necessarily coincide with the whole. So it's important for us today not only to develop the activities and events and amenities around the needs of our members, but it's also very important, as we'll get to towards the tail end of this program, it's very important that you'll learn how to communicate to them. A perfect example of that was the Cornell Club in New York, where I was able to do some strategic planning with them. And we found that every year, 1,200 new members came in under the age of 22 years old. And I thought, my gosh, that's really an exciting trend. It's happening year after year. But then I started looking at the attrition, and every year, about 1,100 of those 1,200 were leaving the club. And we obviously began delving into that. And one of the things that became readily apparent was that there was no activity. I asked, what are you doing for these incoming younger people who are moving to New York City after graduating Cornell and wanting to have that networking opportunity? Oh, we do a networking dinner right after graduation. And I said, what happens? I said, well, we sell it out within 15 minutes. How many times do you do it? Well, we only do it the one time. Then we started looking at their communication, and their communication was to an octogenarian. It had no bearing whatsoever on a fresh out of college young person wanting to network and reach out through other contacts that they have at the Cornell Club. So this is vitally important that we recognize this as we continue to look at brand. So how do we ascertain demographics? Most of you know this, but it bears repeating. Use surveys. Surveys will give you the opportunity not only to ascertain your own member demographic, if you don't already know that, because you're going to ask the age of the responder, you're going to ask the gender of the responder, you're going to ask the tenure of the responder, you're going to ask the family makeup of the responder, and you're also going to ask how far do they live from the club, or how far do they work from the club. All of these things become vitally important as you are looking at the responses. How does a woman respond? Well, if you've ever heard me before, you know that what I have to say about it is 85% of decisions today in the household are being made by the female. And if we're not paying attention to that, it's just dumb stupidity. We have to pay attention to what she's saying, because if that's true, it's the decision to join, it's the decision to stay, it's the decision to engage. So I can't overstate the importance of addressing the woman. The second part is compare to external market for variances. So once you know a little bit about your members and their demographic, and I'm going to show you an analysis of what this looks like, but compare it to your external market to see if you're missing some segment of the market that is available to you. Determine, again, needs by demographic. That's going to come out of your survey, and it's going to be, you're going to look at a survey in a composite. You're also going to look at it from individual demographics, from age, tenure, etc., how far they live. How far they live is one that's sometimes, why do you ask that question? Well, it's fundamentally because the amount of time that someone will travel to an event is directly proportional to the amount of time that event itself takes. And so 15 minutes, I might drive for a 4-hour round of golf, but I'm not driving 15 minutes to just go have dinner every night. And so these are factors that help us understand how we need to position and how we need to brand. Oftentimes we say, well, how do we know what that next generation of member wants? Well, first you have to identify what is your next generation. Look over the past 5 years. What's the demographic? Typically what we're finding today, that it's under 55 with children living at home. If that's the case, you would go back to that survey and you've asked tenure. I'd look at the demographics of the people that have joined over the past 5 years. What is their age? And again, we can almost determine what your not yet a member market is looking at by looking at the responses of the people who have joined your club over the past 5 years. So, I won't belabor it, but the point here is that surveys, which some clubs are inexplainably gun shy of, can give you every tool you need from a marketing perspective. Demographic analysis, again, has never been more important than what we have today. I mean, if we look at age demographics as an example, one of the things that we always do is a 5, 10, 15-minute external market drive time. And we are looking, in this particular case, for those that are earning in excess of $200,000 a year. And so in 15 minutes drive time, this particular market obviously has a considerable number of households. I'm going to show you the variances and how you should look at that information. But then on the right-hand side of this slide, we look at the existing members of this subject matter club. And so what we find is when you compare the two, there are pretty significant differences in the ability of this club, or maybe the direction of this club, to matriculate on the various age levels. So they seem to be doing, as you can see here, very well in the 35 to 44 range. But then when you get out into the 45 to 55 and so on, they are not doing quite as well. And so that raises red flags. And when you look at why they don't match, obviously you can conjecture along with me, but you can drill into this and actually figure out, why are we not attracting in these other age groups? You can look at activities. You can look at cost. You can look at a variety of things that say, why aren't we branding? Why aren't we attracting this demographic to our club? And so one of the things, again, look at the new members that you have coming into the club over the past 5 years. This again is kind of telling you, we're attracting in this age group. Why aren't we attracting in the other age group? They exist in the market. So I might look at competition as well and say, what are they doing to get this overall market? They're getting it from the younger people to the older people. And what this should look like, just going back a couple of slides here, what this should look like is this bell curve on the left. That is what your membership should look like as well. If it doesn't, well, then these are the areas that we have possible deficiencies. Here's the big news on this chart. Over 75% of the clubs we have studied over the years demonstrate that positioning opportunities are being missed because we're not looking at our demographic. We're not understanding what we're capable of doing. If we're not understanding what we're capable of doing, if we're not measuring, we can't manage it. And so the key here is getting the data, managing the data, letting the data tell you where you need to go, and then listening. So market positioning's relation to brand. We could spend a lot of time talking about this, but in my opinion, what we have here is essentially market positioning is brand. If you are addressing the market, addressing your members and everything that you do within the club, what you are doing is setting yourself up to be appealing and attractive to an overall brand. And so how does that play out? And so one of the key issues is, again, what I've said, knowing your member demographics by all of these issues. But why are they joining? Some of the surveys that we've been doing in the recent years have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. We can do a survey now in less than a 5-minute take by the members. And what we're asking them essentially is those demographic questions that we've already gone through. But we're also asking them, here's a whole list of amenities. Here's a whole list of services and things that are going on in the club. On a scale of 1 to 5, please rate these on the basis of their importance and you're making a decision to join. We also ask the question that is similar using that same list. And we're saying, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important are the following in your decision to retain your membership? And then the final question is, on that same scale of 1 to 5 on the same list, we're saying, how are we doing in these areas? And so in that simple 5-minute survey, if you know your market, if you know your members, you have what is now a strategic plan. It's telling you the facilities, the amenities, the services, the activities, the events, all of these things are there. And, again, when we look at surveys, quite a lot of clubs will look only at the composite. The composite is telling you an overall context. But when you start looking at it by the demographic of the responder, and you compare that to tenure of responder, I can now look at what incoming new members are most important, what retaining my older members is most important to them, and all of the demographics in between. These are tools that take us from simply doing okay to staying way ahead of the curve. And that's why I talk about branding a lot in what we do. Branding should be calculated and deliberate based upon your data analysis. I mean, I can't tell you in the 1,400 clubs that we've worked with how many times I've run across a board who will proclaim how much they know about the market, but then when they see the market analysis, they're shocked. Oh, that can't be right. Well, it is right because it's done on the Census Bureau, and that data is representative of your marketplace. It also applies to competitors. I mean, we went through COVID. We all saw what happened. Initiation fees went crazy, and it wasn't on the basis of a demographic analysis. It was on the basis of a conjectural conversation in a boardroom that says, hey, we're 3 times as good as that club, and they're charging 125,000, so we should probably raise our fees to 150,000. So that's like I mean, honest to God, that gives me the chills. It's like driving down a country road at night with your lights off. You're going to run into a tree. That's just how bad that is. Facilities, activities, levels of service, price, elasticity, and the distance members travel all make a difference in how you set up your brand. We worked for a club out in Maryland several years back, and they had a beautiful dining room, beautiful wine cellar, beautiful bar area, but their food and beverage participation was dreadful. And what we found was that 60% of the members lived outside of a 15-minute drive time. They just weren't coming back. And so it's a dreadful problem because that market that was in that 10-minute drive time didn't hardly exist. So they were between a rock and a hard place. That's another story. We'll come back to that at another session someday. Communicating your brand. Here's one of the key issues for us constantly. As Dick Coplin, who is a P10 member of mastermind group that I join, has often said that members are touched an average of 26 times every time they come into the club. You can almost count those off on your fingers and say, yeah, that's probably true. It's also true that prospective members are going through that same perception process. And when that woman walks into the club and doesn't see something there that is meant for her, the reaction is not going to be good. So that's why I always suggested in terms of branding, have an annual calendar of events. It's one of the most important things that you can hand someone that's a prospective member touring the club to take back with them, and have it illustrative of not only golf and tennis and other activities. Make it family, make it something for her, make it something for her kids. These are the kinds of things that little tools, little tiny things that we can do that really do up that brand image. And if it's there, if it's something that we can put out, our website has to be the same way. I can tell you, unequivocally, 9 out of 10 websites that I go to are devoid of people. Well, we're not selling facilities. We're selling an experience. And when people don't see something in there, you're missing a golden opportunity of seeing kids having fun, families having fun, women's events, men's events, golf, tennis, pickleball, all of these things, bocce, whatever it is that you've got, with people enjoying themselves, because that's what the club is all about. It's the experience overall that's most important. There's 2 ways, again, which we communicate, and I think we're all aware of this. And my years ago, when I did sales training at PCMA, we talked about first impressions and passive communications. And the first impressions are made within that first 10 seconds. So whether it's a telephone call or someone walking to the front desk, or a new member walking in for the first time, or an existing member that is walking in for the 3,000th time. First impressions are important. It's the words that we use. It's the the smile that's on our face. So here's a great example. I did a club in California many years ago and did line staff training. And one of the things that if you've tried to do line staff training, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. I could not grasp them. So I said, all right, look, you guys let's create a conspiracy here. I can have everybody in this club talking about you tomorrow. And now all of a sudden their eyes light up and said, hey, what do we got to do? I said, here's what you do. You look someone in the eye, and you have everyone you meet, and you say with the most genuine voice that you have, hey, it's great to see you today. I hope it's a great day for you. And just smile and just keep going. Well, I got on the plane after that meeting, and I was 3 hours in the air to get back to Dallas. And by the time I got home, there were 6 messages on my phone. And it was from the manager. He said, and the messages essentially all said the same thing. Coin, call me. What did you do to this staff? And at the end of the day, what it boiled down to is people were calling because they were getting a completely different look at people who worked for the club that were coming up and meeting them, greeting them, and essentially smiling. And that's what the manager finally said. They're smiling. And I said, what's wrong with that? So again, this passive stuff is far more prevalent than what we give it that we give it credit for. It's the body language. It's the facilities and the shape of the facilities. It's the amenities that are offered and how we program those amenities. It's the maintenance of the building. It's the service level that people get when they walk in. And there's this video, and some of you may have seen it in the past. It was called the Don'ts video. Unfortunately, technical issues don't allow us to show it, but I will make sure that Jordan gets it and will present it out to anybody who's interested. But it shows someone driving into the club, pulling up into the porte cochere, going to the front desk, and then going through every department. And in each experience gets a bit worse because nobody's paying attention. And it's not meant to lambast clubs. It's meant to say that if we don't have a continuous process of identifying areas where we may be letting down on our image, on our brand, then our brand will be affected by it. So I'm sorry that we can't see that one today. There it was. Let me see will that play, Jordan? I get a chance here to play it.
No, it's not going to play, unfortunately.
It's not going to play.
No,
okay.
We'll
all right.
Everybody with the webinar.
Okay. The thing about passive communications is it requires far more training, supervision, and control for all the reasons I just talked about. I mean, you can do a knockdown crazy tour if you alert every department head that you're coming through with a prospective member and give that department head the responsibility of talking to that prospective member as they come into their general area. And as I've always said, if I were being toured and you were taking me through your club, one of the things that you might say to the pro, well, he's a golfer, but he's a 36 handicap. And when I walk into the pro shop, the pro says, hey, Rick, nice to have you with us today. I understand you got a 36 handicap. Have you heard about our bridge club? That's a joke. But the point is here that, if you make it personal, if we make it personal on every level of our touch, our brand is going to soar. The next video here is on the use of videos in general and clubs. And I can tell you that we started doing this about 4 years ago, and it is just phenomenal. We get so tired of being inundated with emails and now texts, and it was a brainchild of somebody. I don't even remember who it was, but we started following and saying, we need to do some more of these. So a lot of clubs today are doing Monday morning updates or Tuesday morning updates if you're closed on Monday. And it gives a kind of an overview of what's happening the coming week. And it gives everybody that fresh start. And They generally don't last for more than 75 seconds. And and it's easy to train. You can do this in your own club. You may want to send it out for post edit, but they're incredible in terms of the response that members are giving us on it. So it's sweeping the communications world. New members. Branding to new members is all important, and you all know, I would presume that a new member is probably about 8 times more likely to refer somebody new. And that may not be all that important today because a lot of clubs today have waiting lists, but it is important from the standpoint of that touch. It's really, really important. So new members, what are our engagement opportunities? Well, it's onboarding for sure. And, when I ask the question at workshops around the country, what are you doing for onboarding? Someone will say, well, I have lunch with them. A GM will say, well, I have lunch with them. And I'm trying to get more. But that's it. And I think most of you have heard me say this, if you listened to me before, that Club Corps did a survey many, many years ago. And they found that 25% of their incoming members were leaving in the first year. And the primary reason was they didn't feel a part of the club. They were never oriented into the club. They were never onboarded. And so onboarding is a part of that brand that is forever. The more you can do to engage every new member, to ensure that they know other members, to ensure that department heads get to know them, that all of the leagues and opportunities of participation are handled by the chair people of those committees. These become an irreplaceable opportunity for you to get them started and get them meeting other people. This is particularly true for people who are moving into the community for the first time and really looking for that touch, that relationship with other people. Departmental invitations, as I said, and passports. And we've talked about this for ad infinitum, but giving them a reason to go department by department. And so one of the things that we've always done in our programs is to give an incoming member a dinner for 4, a lunch for 4. It could not be another member. It had to be somebody that they were bringing in to introduce them to the club. It's a great way to get that process moving. So it's a consistent residual turnover of potential new prospects to the club. So again, it's an opportunity that really, really never stops. Active or passive communications to the community. We know how we communicate to the club. And I think it's important that we understand that the same level of communication is in many cases reaching out to the community through the Friday night cocktail reception. If your brand has worked for you that week, you're going to get a lot of positive comments at that cocktail reception where there are a lot of non-members, possibly with a lot of existing members. And it's unfortunate, but the reality is that some members can't wait to pass along negative news. So let's get away from the negatives and give them a lot of positives to talk about. And you've got ways to, again, enhance that brand. So the other part of this is, while they do know about us, whether we know that or not, they drive by us. They see cars out there. They hear from other members that they had this spectacular event. That's the kind of community presence that you want to build, because that generates a constant, wow, maybe we should be looking into that. Here's a better way. Do events that are geared towards members, but also for them to bring guests, particularly when you make those invitations to the family. There's nothing better for you in terms of your brand is to have one of these children who's attended a family event or a kids event goes home and says, Mom, why can't we join the XYZ club? And it's apparent, again, that if you're building this brand, people will want to have the opportunity to come to those events to see it firsthand. Once they see it firsthand, maybe you've got another person to be in your pipeline to remain, if you have a full membership now, to remain full. So as we wind down the lecture portion of this, I would really like, if you have any questions about what we've gone through, that you send them over to Jordan, and I will try to go through all of these. But here's a closing comment, and that is brand development and facilitation work best when it's intentional. Intentional is the key word. We have to make things intentional. It's whether it's communication, whether it's the services we provide, whether it's the communication that we have with our members or the outside. It has to be intentional. What is the purpose? And if you can define the purpose, you can define your brand and your culture. So, if you'd like copies, I think, as Jordan said, she's going to make sure you get this. If you have any questions anytime, and I've always done this, that's my personal phone number, my personal cell phone number. Use it, call me. I'm happy to share or elaborate. We tried to get through this in a brief period of time in deference to everybody's time, but there's a lot more to be said. There's a lot more to be done. There's a lot more that can help in assisting you get your growth, retention, engagement, and satisfaction all moving up. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to hearing any questions.
Perfect. So we've got a couple good questions here. We'll be taking questions for the next about 15 minutes. So if any pop up, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A chat. But we'll go ahead and get started on some of these. So one of the major questions we have so far is we have some members who they have done surveys for the members in their clubs before, but unfortunately the response rate is pretty low. How would you suggest to encourage members to complete the survey?
That's a great question. And I think that there's three things that I'd like for you to know about surveys. Number one, if they're too long and they're too laborious, and you do them too frequently, your rate of return is going to go down. So keep them key and on point. Get your demographics and then get directly to the questions. Don't anything over about 15 minutes and you're going to lose people. So that's number one. How do you advertise it's coming? Why is it important? So a communications plan leading into the survey as to it's coming, why we need it, why their input is so important to us. And the third piece that I would tell you is that if you need an incentive, maybe it's just a complimentary hors d'oeuvre or something when they come in for dinner. You're doing two things. You're getting them to come in for dinner, and you're getting them to complete the survey. So the incentives, what I've found, are uniquely different from club to club to club. But ultimately, I would again tell you that if you go about it that way, your response rate is going to be high. And what is high? I think that's a key question. Anything over 50%, I can tell you that as we've just gone through all this political polling that goes on, and you hear this, it's accurate within a plus or minus margin of error. If you have over 50% response of your members to a survey, you're probably within the 3 to 4 percentile plus or minus of being representative of your entire club. 40% is going to be around 8% plus or minus. So, and the reason for that high level is because clubs are closed communities. And when you're asking a closed community a condensed set of questions about their experiences, you're going to get this low frequency of error in the returns. And statistically, all of that can be proven. But better communications and follow through. Make sure after you've done a survey that you have somehow summarized it and give them all of the facts that were pertinent for them to know. And I think that all of that contributes towards better returns. By the way, I would also suggest that those of you who are, and I'm sure you all are, PCMA members, participate in PCMA surveys. I've seen the lowest rate of return in my experience by members of this association responding to surveys. It's important. The association is trying to give you answers on how to deal with things, and if we don't understand the issues, you can't get the answers. Sorry.
All right. So next question. Do you have any onboarding suggestions?
Wow. Yes. And it's intense. I mean, to me, onboarding, and it at one time, if you remember prior to COVID, I would have to tell you that we were 2 years away from, maybe even 12 months away from disaster in terms of clubs and membership. Along comes COVID and we get all of these new members in. So it became less important because we were so busy taking applications that we weren't really interested in onboarding, and we filled up so quickly nobody wanted to leave because they were afraid they'd never get back into another club. So onboarding to some degree kind of fell by the wayside. But I would tell you that first and foremost, in orientation with the GM, I lean towards videos. Let them come in, watch a video about the club. What can they expect? I would clearly take them through mission, vision, and core values, because ultimately everything we do in the club down the road is got to be based on some guiding principles. As a member, I'd like to know what those guiding principles are when I've made a decision to plunk down some money and become a member of your club. Will I fit in? So I think it's important to know that mission. The staff should know that mission. The board should operate under that mission. So I think that's another piece. I think department heads should be held responsible to ensure that they are, if it's a golfer, there's nobody more important in that club than the golf pro. So an invitation to come out and play 9 holes or with 2 other incoming new members. And that goes all the way through the department head process. If there's children in the family, get them together with your activities director. So, and it's, this can happen over a period of time. Make sure they're invited to events. Make sure the chair people of all of the golf associations or tennis associations have a list of the incoming new members, and that they're getting an invitation to participate if that happens to be their area of interest. So I could go on. I really could go on for probably an hour about what is necessary in onboarding. And again, anybody that wants to get bored by my litany of of ideas, I'd be happy to hear from you.
Okay, so we have another follow-up on onboarding. So this question says, with regard to onboarding, 2/3 of our membership is out of the area. It is difficult to get these new members in for an orientation. Do you have any suggestions on what to do here? We were thinking of possibly a new member page.
That's a great idea, by the way. I think a new member page would be would be awesome, and would also be available, I'm assuming, to the rest of the members so that they could see who these people were, so that they could welcome them in. And I think this goes back to, okay, if they aren't available because you're a second home community or whatever that reason is, then I would have the opportunity to create a a video around what that orientation should cover. I'd have something I could hand to them or put into their mailbox that is written that would describe the various things. And again, I think it's about, here's our guiding principles, here's who we are, we want to serve you, let us know. Even a survey to an incoming member, how can we help you? To where now you can give that over to the appropriate people. I know that's probably not as definitive as you would like, but without knowing the particulars on it, it's about as deep as I think we want to go.
All right, our next question here. Can you use pulse surveys to help determine club culture?
Say that again, Jord.
Can you use pulse surveys to help determine club culture?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you club culture is often something that exists in a club. I'm not sure that it's necessarily intentional. But when you're doing surveys and you're able to extract by demographic the differentials between age or gender, I mean, it's almost unbelievable to see surveys when you take out the female's response to certain areas. So building that culture is really about being able to cross-tab what members want by age, by gender, by tenure, by distance to from the club, by family makeup. All of these things it's not easy. I mean, it literally, but this is an interesting story because I was introduced to AI in this way. It used to take, when I do that simple survey that I just talked to you about, it would take me 3 days to go through and cross-tab all of the data that was coming out of it. And one of the folks that was working with us at the time said to me, hey, send that spreadsheet over and I'll show you how AI will take that information. And about 15 minutes later, he sends me a screenshot of his computer, and the computer is writing a narrative around the spreadsheet that I just sent him. And that spreadsheet was that narrative were almost my words. It was translating this information by different demographics and cross-tabbing in a way that it was a gold mine. I mean, some things that after having done this for a long time, I actually missed. And I think AI is a boon to all of us if we can learn to use it to take data from a survey and trim it down into useful information.
Awesome. Well, any other questions last minute, go ahead and put those in. If no more questions, that concludes today.
It's always great to talk with you guys. Thanks so much for attending today. And as I've always said, life is about planting trees under whose shade you never expect to sit. So with that having been said, I'm here anytime to anybody that has a question. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, we have one more little question actually just came in, if you want to answer it real quick.
Sure.
How do you feel about hiring a company to do your club's branding?
I think, in the absence of the ability to do the kinds of things that we have discussed today, from surveys to market analysis to developing a communication strategy, if you don't have the talent in-house to do that, I think it would be beneficial to go to an outside agency to get that done. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think that concludes all of our questions. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Rick, for the time today. I know there were a lot of takeaways and probably a lot to digest from everybody that joined. So like Rick said, here's his personal contact information. If you guys have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to him directly, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.